Thank you, Deep-Roy Clow, and I'm delighted to see that I've drawn such a crowd for my debate on water, so it's brilliant. And I'd just like to confirm that I've agreed to give Mike Hedges and Sam Curtis a minute of my time. I wanted to raise this debate today on water issues in Wales for a variety of reasons, with the overarching one being that I believe, as a Senedd, we don't pay enough attention to the challenges faced by the water industry in this country, namely maintaining the affordability of bills and the intricate part it plays in land and waterway management. As we all know in this chamber, household and business energy bills are not the only utility bills affected by the unprecedented rise in wholesale energy costs. The water industry not only faces higher energy costs themselves, but are very often the first bill that goes unpaid as consumers struggle to meet costs. The water industry therefore faces a disproportionate challenge in that their costs are going up and their revenue is exposed to volatility and decline, which ultimately then pushes bills up for other customers. This is important not only because of the impact to households and business finances, but because of the long-term implications it has for the water sector. Due to climate change and population growth, among other factors, we cannot ignore the needs of the water sector in terms of appropriate legislation and the requirement to drive behavioural change among our population. In order to better use our national resources, we need to think more carefully about sustainable water usage and the effects that sewage overflows are having on our river water quality and natural environment. In Wales, out of the 1.37 million households that we have, a staggering 175,000 face water poverty, meaning that over 5% of their household income after housing costs is spent on their water bills. Of those 175,000 households, only 35% receive financial support to pay their water bills, leaving an estimated 114,000 households struggling to pay their water bills. Joint research from CCW and Ofwat, published earlier this year, found that one-third of customers struggle to pay bills fairly frequently. And this is a huge problem that is being compounded by the unprecedented rise in energy costs and the rise in interest rates and inflation. Affordability schemes at present are different from each water company in Wales, and this does present problems, as there's an almost postcode lottery as to whether or not you are eligible for support and by how much. As such, CCW, previously known as the Consumer Council for Water, is therefore calling on both the Welsh and UK governments to implement a single water affordability scheme to cover England and Wales, to ensure that nobody struggles to pay their water bill. And I would like to take this opportunity to encourage the Welsh Government to support a universal affordability scheme right across England and Wales, and to work with CCW, DEFRA and the UK Government in helping to achieve this. I am aware that the UK Government has established a working group to explore the viability of a single water affordability scheme and are planning to consult on the proposal, with the proposed scheme being funded from a central pot and helping to ensure that costs do not fall disproportionately on those geographical areas with the biggest water problems, such as Wales. In fact, modelling suggests a single industry scheme would be likely to reduce current average cross-subsidies on water bills in Wales, whilst delivering more comprehensive support. And I would therefore advocate in the strongest possible terms for Welsh Government ministers to fully engage with this consultation and proposal. In addition to this affordability scheme, I'd also like to urge this government to encourage water companies in Wales to launch coordinated campaigns at a national level to inform people of the support that is already available to them and to make water-related assistance more visible through other advisory agencies, such as the Citizens Advice Bureau. I believe that this would be a valuable step in helping people across Wales, especially since evidence has shown that people who are struggling with debt and are financially vulnerable take on average 2 years to seek help, and as a result their financial troubles very often manifest into mental health issues. In many cases, these struggles could have been avoided with earlier intervention and awareness of the affordability and debt write-off schemes that are available to them. I would like to remind this government and members here that it's in everyone's interest that those struggling to pay water bills get the help and support they need as quickly as possible, not only because it helps them alleviate the worry and stress that comes with struggling to afford bills and manage household finances, but because the debt that they incur is often reclaimed by water companies through higher bills to other customers who may in themselves be struggling as well. turning to land and waterway management and issues affecting our natural environment, like climate change, we know that water companies have a duty of care to maintain and look after parts of our natural environment, and the money that's needed to do this comes from bill revenue. If a situation is created whereby water companies are starved of revenue because of too high a debt write-off, then it reduces the money available for companies to manage assets, which can unfortunately lead to many of the environmental issues we are hearing in this chamber. In Wales and across the United Kingdom, substantial investment in water and sewerage networks is needed to ensure that they can withstand the pressures of a changing climate and growing population, for the development of new sources of water, and to continue to reduce leakage and wastage from the network. It is imperative that people on low incomes have the support they need to keep bills affordable. As my colleague Peter Fox pointed out in his question to the First Minister last week, Wales is now officially in drought, following the driest 5-month period in 40 years, which saw Wales receive just 61% of its expected annual rainfall between March and July. As a population, we therefore need to think very carefully about how we use water. The National Infrastructure Commission England, NIC, recommends that in order to address the growing gap between supply and demand, 1/3 of water demand can be reduced by helping and encouraging people to change their behaviour and use less water. The NIC also suggests that reducing water could be the most cost-effective action taken to adapt to climate change, and the introduction of universal smart metering would be cost-neutral. I would therefore challenge the Welsh Government to ensure that NRW's drought planning measures include public communication and education on how best to use water, especially since we are likely to experience drought weather more often, and ask them to highlight any initiatives they are planning for the future. Moreover, I would also like to support CCW's call for a thorough assessment of water resources in Wales and the resilience of supply infrastructure, and for this to be prioritised in future National Infrastructure Commission Wales work programmes. I believe that in Wales there is an undercurrent of public opinion that considers water as inaccessibly abundant, and therefore we do not need to be mindful of any supply issues. However, this is not necessarily the case. Although Wales is a nation where we have plenty of rainfall, we do not have capacity to store large amounts of water, because historically we have never needed to. Unless we are going to spend vast sums of money increasing our water retention capability, we need to prioritise change in public behaviour and attitudes. The Welsh Government, in my mind, needs to pay more attention to exploring ways in which people can be encouraged to reduce demand on supplies by helping consumers to change their behaviour. To complement this, I believe more can be done to encourage innovation and provide further water-efficient products, which will make it easier for people to save water. I would further like to ask the Welsh Government how they have pressed water companies to accelerate response times to visible leaks. This is particularly important at a time when people are being asked to conserve water because rainfall rates have been low. Showing a determination to address leakage will help encourage people to make everyday changes to their own water use. As my final point, I want to briefly discuss river water quality and storm overflows. This is not just a Welsh problem, but one that affects the United Kingdom as a whole. And I believe that it is imperative that we have a collaborative working approach with the UK Government and all water companies to improve water quality and in particular stop overflow of sewage into rivers. Despite the numerous explanations as to why storm overflows are a necessary part of sewage infrastructure and the comparatively low number of events, I cannot believe that in the 21st century we are still polluting our rivers and coastal water with sewage. Not only is this harmful for the environment and potentially dangerous to bathers, but the perception that it gives to tourists and the Welsh population is that we do not care about our environment, which, as we all know, it cannot be further from the truth. With the increasing public interest on the impact of storm overflows on environmental water quality, I believe that ministers should support the National Infrastructure Commission in extending its work and reviewing a raft of recommendations for the improvement of wastewater infrastructure resilience, with the outcome of alleviating flood risks for our communities, ensuring resilient sewerage services and protecting the natural environment, whilst also preserving local economies. I would like to conclude my contribution by saying that we have some serious challenges to the water industry in Wales, both in terms of helping people to afford their bills and in upgrading the water and sewerage network to provide greater resilience against climate changes and to reduce the impact of sewerage on our environment. Whilst I recognise that a lot of very good work goes on, we nonetheless need to be mindful that there needs to be greater purpose in that work and an urgency in its delivery. Thank you, Deep Clough.